Let me ask you a question tonight. What if the restlessness you feel is not confusion, but a command? What if the discomfort you've been praying away is actually God trying to move you forward? Some of you have been asking God for peace, but God has been asking you for courage. And tonight, heaven has an announcement for your life. Pack your bag. It's time. There comes a moment in every destiny when God does not explain, God instructs. Not everything God tells you will make sense. Not every season comes with details. Sometimes God doesn't give a map. God gives a push. You thought the shaking meant you were losing something, but God says, I'm relocating you. You thought the door closed to punish you, but God says, I closed it because you stayed too long. This is not about geography. This is not about luggage. This is about movement. This is about obedience. This is about trusting the voice of God over the comfort of familiarity. And if you can hear this message, it means God is not done with you. God is repositioning you. So tonight I came to tell somebody, God said, pack your bag. It's time. Let me tell you something most people don't realize until they look back on their lives. God rarely speaks first through comfort. God speaks through tension. God speaks through that uneasy feeling you can't explain. God speaks through the moment when everything looks fine on the outside, but inside you feel stuck, restless, irritated, and unsatisfied. You wake up in the same bed, follow the same routine, go to the same job, talk to the same people, and yet something inside you keeps whispering, there has to be more than this. You try to ignore it. You distract yourself. You call it stress, burnout, or boredom. But what if it's not any of those things? What if that discomfort is not a problem to escape, but a signal from God? Think about daily life. When you sit too long in one position, your body starts to ache, not because the chair hates you, but because your body is designed to move. Pain becomes a message. Shift. Discomfort becomes information. In the same way, when God wants to move you, God doesn't always send fireworks or signs in the sky. Sometimes God sends unease, a holy dissatisfaction, a sense that the place you're in no longer fits who you're becoming. You used to tolerate things that now drain you. Conversations that once felt normal now feel heavy. Environments that once energized you now exhaust you. And you keep asking, why am I so irritated lately? God says, because you're still sitting in a season I already told you to stand up from. Discomfort is not God abandoning you. It is God activating you. Look at how we live. Your phone battery starts overheating, it's a warning. If your car dashboard lights up, it's not punishment, it's protection. Ignoring the signal doesn't make the issue go away, it makes it worse. In the same way, ignoring spiritual discomfort doesn't bring peace. It delays progress. Some of you have been praying for peace while God has been trying to provoke movement. You want calm, but God wants courage. You want stability, but God wants growth. And growth always begins with tension. You stayed because it was familiar. You stayed because it was safe. You stayed because at one time it worked. But seasons expire. And when a season ends, comfort becomes captivity. What once sheltered you can start to suffocate you. That frustration you feel at work. It's not laziness, it's misalignment. That dissatisfaction in certain relationships, it's not arrogance, it's awareness. That inner voice saying, I can't do this forever, that's not fear talking, that's God signaling transition. God will often disturb your comfort before God delivers your breakthrough. Because if God made the next level too comfortable, you'd never leave the current one. So God lets the chair get uncomfortable. God lets the walls feel tight. God lets the routine feel heavy. So you'll finally ask, is it time to move? And here's the truth most people miss. Discomfort doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It often means something is right within you. It means you're growing. It means your spirit has outgrown the space you're in. It means God has deposited more inside you than your current situation can contain. When shoes are too small, your feet hurt. Not because your feet are bad, but because they've grown. When a room feels tight, it's not because the room shrank, it's because you expanded. God never wastes discomfort. God uses it to wake you up, to shake you loose, to remind you that you were not created to stay stagnant. Comfort zones feel good, but they don't build strength. They don't activate faith. They don't reveal purpose. That's why God allows disruption. That's why plans fall apart. That's why routines stop working. God is saying, I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to move you. And the moment you stop fighting the discomfort, the moment you stop numbing it, the moment you stop calling it a problem and start asking, what is God preparing me for? Everything changes. Discomfort is the knock on the door of your destiny. Ignore it and you stay where you are. Answer it and you step into who you're meant to become. So don't curse the tension. Don't fear the unease. Don't silence the restlessness. Lean into it. Listen to it. Because when God makes you uncomfortable, it's not rejection, it's direction. And if you feel uncomfortable right now, maybe it's not because you're failing. Maybe it's because God is saying, pack your bag. It's time. Most people think movement means uncertainty. They think stepping into something new means risking loss, confusion, or failure. But when God tells you to move, it is never random. God does not interrupt your life without intention. Every shift God allows is loaded with meaning, even when you don't understand it at the moment. In daily life, nothing important moves without a reason. When a farmer plants seeds, it's not for decoration, it's for harvest. When a teacher advances a student to the next grade, it's not to confuse them. It's because they've outgrown the current level. When a doctor changes a prescription, it's not to punish the patient, it's to heal them more effectively. Movement always follows purpose. And if God is asking you to pack your bag, it's because there is something ahead of you that cannot reach you where you are. Think about how life works. You don't leave home in the morning without knowing why. You don't travel without a destination in mind. Even when plans change, there's still intention behind the movement. In the same way, God never says go without already knowing where you're headed. You may not see the full picture, but God sees the entire route. Many people struggle because they believe God moves them away from something rather than towards something. But God is not focused on what you're losing. God is focused on what you're about to gain. What feels like an ending is often a setup. What feels like a detour is often the shortest path to growth. You might be leaving a job that paid the bills but drained your spirit. God is not removing income. God is repositioning influence. You might be stepping out of a relationship that once supported you but now limits you. God is not creating loneliness. God is making room for alignment. You might be leaving a place that felt familiar but kept you small. God is not uprooting you to harm you. God is transplanting you so you can grow. Look at how nature works. A seed doesn't complain when it's buried because burial is not destruction, it's preparation. The seed has to move from the hand into the soil to reach its potential. If it stayed in the packet, it would remain safe, but it would never become what it was designed to be. Purpose requires placement, and God is the only one who knows the correct environment for what's inside you. That's why God never moves you without provision already waiting. The door may close behind you, but another one is already open ahead of you, even if you can't see it yet. Provision doesn't always show up first. Sometimes movement activates it. Just like you don't see the next street until you turn the corner, clarity often appears after obedience. In everyday life, promotions don't come to people who refuse responsibility. Opportunities don't open for people who never show up. Growth doesn't happen for those who stay frozen in fear. Movement signals readiness. When you take a step, you're saying, I trust that something greater is ahead. And God responds to that trust. Some of you are afraid because you want guarantees before you move. But guarantees eliminate faith. God doesn't show you everything at once because if you saw the entire journey, you might rely on the plan instead of trusting the one who designed it. God reveals just enough to keep you moving and just enough to keep you dependent. You're not behind, you're not late, you're not lost. If God is nudging you forward, it means the next phase is already prepared. The move isn't about escape. It's about alignment. It's about being in the right place at the right time for the right reason. Think about moments in your past that didn't make sense then, but make perfect sense now. The job you didn't get, the move you didn't want, the door that closed unexpectedly. At the time, it felt like rejection. Now you see it was redirection. God didn't block your path. God saved you from walking into something that couldn't sustain you. Purpose is always bigger than comfort. And when God moves you, it's because your life is about to expand in ways your current position cannot support. The blessing ahead needs space. The growth ahead needs exposure. The calling ahead needs courage. So when God says pack your bag, don't panic, don't overanalyze, don't assume loss, recognize intention, recognize design, recognize divine strategy at work. You're not moving into emptiness, you're moving into preparat. Ion, you're moving into placement, you're moving into purpose. And even if you don't know exactly where you're going yet, know this with certainty: God would not move you unless something meaningful was already waiting for you on the other side. One of the hardest lessons in life is understanding that waiting when God has already spoken is not patience, it's hesitation. We tell ourselves we're being careful, responsible, or wise, but deep down we know the truth. We heard the inner instruction. We felt the pull. We recognized the moment, and we paused because fear started negotiating with obedience. In daily life, hesitation always has consequences. When the traffic light turns green and the first car doesn't move, everything behind it gets delayed. Not because the road is blocked, but because someone hesitated at the signal. Life works the same way. When God gives you a green light and you don't move, momentum is lost. Not because God changed direction, but because timing matters. Think about opportunities you miss, not because you weren't capable, but because you waited too long. You thought about starting that business but kept saying next year. Someone else started it. You considered learning a new skill but told yourself you were too busy. Now you wish you had begun earlier. You felt the urge to speak up, to apply, to leave, to begin. But hesitation disguised itself as logic, and time quietly moved on. God doesn't shout instructions repeatedly. God speaks, then watches for response. Obedience is not about perfection, it's about movement. Delayed obedience slowly turns into comfort with staying where you are. And comfort has a dangerous way of convincing you that delay is harmless until you realize you've been standing still for years. Look at everyday examples. When a train arrives at the station, it doesn't wait forever. The doors open, there is a window, and then they close. If you hesitate too long, the train still leaves on schedule. The destination didn't change, the opportunity didn't disappear, but you're no longer on board. Not because you were rejected, but because you waited. Some people are tired not because they're doing too much, but because they're stuck between decision and action. That in-between space is exhausting. You keep replaying the same thoughts, weighing the same options, asking the same questions. Your body is still, but your mind is running nonstop. God never intended for you to live trapped in indecision. Clarity doesn't come from overthinking. It comes from obedience and motion. You don't need every detail before you move. In real life, you don't see the entire staircase. You see the next step. You don't wait for all the traffic lights to turn green. You move when the one in front of you does. Waiting for certainty before action is like refusing to swim until the water stops moving. Delayed obedience doesn't look rebellious. It looks reasonable. It says, I just need a little more time. I'm not ready yet. He'll do it when things calm down, but life doesn't calm down. Perfect timing rarely arrives. What arrives is now, and now is the moment God works with. Fear loves delay because delay keeps you safe from failure, but it also keeps you safe from growth. You avoid risk, but you also avoid reward. You avoid discomfort, but you also avoid transformation. Staying where you are feels secure, but it slowly teaches you to settle. Think about physical fitness. If you keep delaying exercise because you don't feel ready, your strength doesn't stay the same. It declines. Muscles weaken when unused. Momentum fades when ignored. In the same way, spiritual and personal strength grow only when acted upon. Obedience builds confidence. Delay feeds doubt. God doesn't ask for a lifetime commitment in one moment. God asks for a step. But that step has a time attached to it. When you miss the moment, you don't lose your value, but you do lose that season's opportunity. And seasons don't repeat themselves exactly the same way. Some of you are asking why things feel stuck. It's because your life is waiting on a decision you already know you need to make. You're waiting on a sign, but the sign already came. It just didn't look dramatic. It came as an inner knowing, a repeated thought, a persistent nudge you couldn't shake. Delayed obedience is like leaving a message on read and never replying. The instruction came through. The question is not whether God spoke. The question is whether you responded. The moment you move, momentum returns. Energy comes back, clarity sharpens, confidence grows. Not because everything becomes easy, but because alignment creates strength. So stop negotiating with fear. Stop postponing courage. Stop calling delay wisdom when it's really reluctance. If God stirred you, it's because the time is now, not later, not someday, not when you feel braver. Obedience doesn't wait for comfort. Obedience creates movement, and movement opens doors delay never will. If you're tired of standing still, maybe the answer isn't more waiting. Maybe the answer is simple. Move. Now, one of the greatest reasons people struggle when God tells them to move is not fear of the new, it's attachment to the old. God never says pack your bag without also meaning leave some things behind. And this is where many people get stuck. They want a new season with old habits, a bigger future with smaller thinking, growth without release. But life doesn't work that way. Think about daily life. When you travel, airlines don't negotiate with you. There's a weight limit. Not because they're cruel, but because the plane can't lift everything safely. If your bag is too heavy, you don't argue. You remove items. Not everything is bad. Not everything is wrong. Some things are just too heavy for where you're going. God works the same way. When God prepares you for the next level, God checks your load. Attitudes, routines, mindsets, relationships, behaviors. Some of them helped you survive the last season, but they will slow you down in the next one. And God loves you too much to let extra weight cause unnecessary turbulence. You keep asking God to take you higher, but elevation requires reduction. The higher you go, the lighter you must be. Climbers don't carry luxury items to the top of a mountain. They carry only what is essential. Everything else becomes a liability. And God is saying, if you want the height, you have to release the weight. Some of you are carrying habits that no longer serve who you're becoming. They were comfortable once, familiar, easy. But now they drain your energy and dull your vision. God isn't condemning you. God is refining you. There's a difference. Refinement isn't punishment. It's preparation. Others are carrying old mindsets. The way you think about yourself, the way you limit your own potential, the way you speak doubt over your future. Those thoughts didn't stop you from getting this far, but they will stop you from going further. You can't step into expansion while carrying small expectations. And then there are people. This is the hardest part. Not everyone who walked with you can walk where you're going. Not because they're bad, but because they're assigned to a different season. Some relationships were meant to support you, not define you, to walk with you for a chapter, not the whole story. Holding on too long turns appreciation into attachment, and attachment can become resistance in everyday life. Children, even to ally, outgrow their clothes. Parents don't get angry at the clothes. They don't shame the child. They simply acknowledge growth. Wearing what no longer fits restricts movement. It looks familiar, but it feels uncomfortable. That's how many people live, emotionally wearing what they've outgrown. God is saying, stop trying to make the old fit the new. The next season needs room. Room for growth, room for clarity, room for strength. If you're packed too tight with yesterday, there's no space for tomorrow. You don't bring winter coats into summer because they don't match the environment. In the same way, you can't carry survival habits into a season of stability. You can't carry defensive thinking into a season of trust. You can't carry scarcity mindset into abundance. What once protected you may now be holding you back. Letting go doesn't mean what you carried was wrong. It means its assignment is complete. God is not erasing your past. God is honoring it by saying, you don't need this anymore. Release is not loss, it's maturity. Many people delay obedience because they don't want to release control. They want to know exactly what stays and what goes. But packing requires trust. Trust that if God asks you to leave something behind, it's because it won't be needed where you're going, or because it will be replaced by something better. Look at how life upgrades work. When your phone updates, some old apps stop working, not because they were useless, but because the system has evolved. If you try to keep everything the same, the system crashes. Growth requires updates. Updates require letting go. Some of you are exhausted because you were carrying emotional baggage you were never meant to take forward. Old guilt, old regrets, old disappointments. God is saying, why are you packing pain I already healed? You don't need proof of past struggles to justify future success. You don't need scars to remind you of strength. You already survived. When God says pack your bag, God is also saying be intentional. Choose what serves your future, not what reminds you of your past. Choose faith over fear, growth over familiarity, purpose over people-pleasing. Travel light, not careless, intentional, not empty focus. The lighter you pack, the freer you move. The freer you move, the faster you respond. And the faster you respond, the clearer the journey becomes. If you're struggling to move forward, ask yourself honestly, what am I still carrying that God never asked me to bring? Because the next season isn't heavy, the resistance is in the baggage. One of the biggest myths people believe is that they must feel ready before they move. They think confidence comes first and action comes second. But life teaches us the opposite. Movement creates readiness. God does not wait for you to feel prepared. God waits for you to trust enough to step forward anyway. In daily life, no one ever feels fully ready for the moments that matter most. No one feels ready to ride a bike the first time without training wheels. No one feels ready on their first day at a new job. No one feels ready when they speak in front of people for the first time. Readiness doesn't arrive before the step. It arrives because of the step. Think about learning to swim. You can stand at the edge of the pool for hours, watching others move through the water. You can study techniques, ask questions, and imagine how it will feel. But until you actually get in the water, your body doesn't learn balance. Confidence doesn't come from watching. It comes from immersion. God knows this. That's why God doesn't wait for your emotions to align before giving instruction. Faith is not the absence of fear. Faith is moving with fear still present. If you wait until fear disappears, you will never move. Fear fades after motion begins, not before. Courage is not a feeling. It is a decision. Everyday life proves this. When you drive at night, your headlights don't light the entire road. They only show you a short distance ahead, yet that's enough to keep moving. If you waited for full visibility, you'd never reach your destination. God works the same way. God gives just enough clarity for the next step, not the whole journey. Trust fills the gap between what you see and where you're going. Some of you keep telling yourself, I'll move when I feel stronger. But strength is built through resistance. Muscles don't grow by waiting. They grow by being used. In the same way, spiritual and emotional, now strength come from action. Every step you take reinforces your belief that you can take another one. You might feel unqualified, but qualification comes through obedience. You might feel unsure, but certainty is developed through experience. You might feel small, but growth begins the moment you stop measuring yourself by your feelings and start measuring yourself by your faith. God does not call the fearless. God builds courage in the willing. Willingness says, I don't have all the answers, but I trust the voice guiding me. That trust is what transforms hesitation into movement. Look at daily responsibilities. Parents don't feel ready the moment they hold their child for the first time. Leaders don't feel ready when they step into responsibility. Teachers don't feel ready on their first day in front of a classroom. Yet growth happens because they step forward anyway. Responsibility shapes readiness. If you wait to feel perfect, you'll miss powerful moments meant to shape you. God is not waiting for perfection. God is waiting for participation. The process will teach you what preparation never could. Some of you are standing at the edge of change, telling yourself you need more confidence. But confidence doesn't fall from the sky. Confidence is built when you survive what you were once afraid of. Each step becomes evidence that you are capable. Each move becomes proof that God is with you. Waiting to feel ready often masks fear of failure. But failure is not the end. Stagnation is. Failure teaches, stagnation drains. You learn more from moving and stumbling than from standing still and imagining success. God knows you won't feel ready. That's why the instruction comes anyway. God is not trying to pressure you. God is trying to position you. If God waited for comfort, growth would never happen. When you take the step, something shifts. Your mind adjusts. Your strength activates. Your vision sharpens. What once felt impossible begins to feel manageable. Not because the situation changed, but because you changed. So stop asking yourself if you feel ready. Ask yourself if you trust God enough to move without feeling ready. That question changes everything. The step comes first. The strength follows. The confidence grows. And one day you'll look back and realize what you thought required readiness actually required faith in motion. There is a truth many people overlook. Clarity does not come before movement. It comes because of movement. People spend years asking for direction, waiting for certainty, praying for answers, hoping for a clear sign while standing completely still. But life does not reward hesitation with clarity. Life rewards commitment. Think about daily life. When you're using a GPS, it doesn't recalculate the route until you start driving. If you sit in your driveway waiting for